BMO Bucks Radio Network broadcast was sponsored by BMO Sargento Cheese.
Dame, he's going to step back and fire this one up over Mobley, and he hits again.
The Freighter and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network. Uline.
Giannis going the other way, down the lane, slams it down with a ferocious one-hand jam.
Potawatomi Casino Hotel and Michelob Ultra. You've been listening to Bucks Basketball on the home of the Bucks, WTMJ.
Call quality for the signature service you deserve.
For 60 years, we've been known as Quality Heating, offering the highest levels of HVAC expertise. But when I took over for Greg, I saw the potential to add services for all your home needs. We do heating and cooling so well, I figured, why not offer new trades to give all-around home service to our customers? So along with heating and cooling, we now offer top-flight plumbing and electric services. There's no subs here, and we all work under the quality code of taking pride in the Midwestern work ethic, and more importantly, Midwestern morals. You know, much of our trade has gone corporate with private equities, but we remain a family-owned company. This is Anthony Zanevsky with Quality, offering heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric. For the signature service you deserve, call Quality.
Call quality for the signature service you deserve.
Call Quality, now offering heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric.
By now you've probably figured out what's most important to us at Semperfi is our reputation. Building a great character-driven remodeling company is actually quite easy. It's just the first 20 years that are a bit challenging. Great companies are collections of great people, and we have great people. They're the ones that helped us build our reputation, but they only come after you've built something they want to be part of. We don't necessarily have to look for good people. They come to us. And that's what you want when you hire an exterior remodeling company. Someone who's going to stand behind their work, and a company that is truly proud of their people. And it's because they do great work. And when you're ready, we'll do great work for you too. This is Brad Youngluth with Semperfi Roofing and Exteriors, your local, veteran-owned and operated exterior remodeling company. For your new roof, siding, window and door installation, or masonry work, you can count on Semperfi to keep you safe, warm, and dry.
We keep you safe, warm, and dry. Semperfi.
If you're concerned about heart health, remember that you are not powerless. At the Freighter and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, we're pushing to outsmart heart and vascular disease by helping to assess your risks and guide you to heart strength, by providing breakthrough research and renowned expertise for treating common conditions and the most serious. Let's stay out in front of heart and vascular disease and embrace every day life has to offer. Learn more at freighter.com/heart.
Now that the game is done, it's our time to check in.
And he splashes it through. Splash Mountain is locked and loaded tonight. The rides are free. 4 of 5 from distance.
Let's Talk starts now.
Lillard drives inside, scoots to the hoop, lays it in with 3.9 seconds to go.
And now, live from Fiserv Forum, here's Justin Garcia and Brandon Snide.
Well, it really felt like the basketball gods just looked down on the Bucks and said, "Enough's enough. We're going to give you this one, and make sure Alperen does not score on that final play because the Bucks played a very good game once again tonight. Sure, there were moments that Doc Rivers pointed out the way they closed out the third quarter, especially the way that the Rockets were able to start the fourth quarter on an 8-0 run and erase that lead. But in many ways, this game was a mirror image for these two teams. The way the Bucks came out after the first 2 or 3 minutes of this game, when it really felt like this could go south quickly. I know Doc even pointed this out in the pregame in his commentary in that we saw parts of that Bulls-Rockets game. And what we noticed was it was a close game. It was a 2 or 3 point game at the end of one. And then before you knew it, it was above 30. And it was a 30-point margin going into halftime. That's the danger of this Houston Rockets team and what they can do. And the way the Bucks started the game, I think most Bucks fans that are familiar with the Houston Rockets probably had the feeling of, oh boy, here we go. But they did a good job of gathering themselves, going on a run of their own, making it a one-point game going into the second quarter, and eventually pulling forward and building up a big lead. That was largely due to their defense. There are things we can pick apart and say, hey, the Bucks need to improve this. They do. There are some things that really stood out once again tonight. But going off of what we discussed Saturday afternoon, Brandon, I think the main point of all of this is it's starting to move in the right direction. The defense especially, that this is a group that is just at the very least making sure you are going to be competitive in these games.
Yeah, they're one bad call, Justin, away from winning 4 in a row. But we'll take it for sure tonight. A couple of game balls, and I owe Brook Lopez a minute here, if you don't mind me taking the time. Absolutely, I don't know, maybe one of the best games I've ever seen from Brook Lopez, at least of recent memory. 27 points, 10 rebounds, just all around. I don't know where this team is, especially early on, Justin, after they fall down 16-3 early in that first quarter, where they're at without Brook Lopez. I thought he carried them offensively, especially when Damian Lillard was struggling a little bit early on. So absolutely shout out to Brook. Heck of a game. You deserve a game ball. And A.J. Green is my other game ball tonight, Justin. The scoring, he had 5 points. He had maybe the biggest shot of the night, though, when the Bucks were down 4 points, hitting that three-pointer. But I thought defensively, and you and I have talked about it. We've mentioned Andre Jackson Jr., Ryan Rollins, obviously. But I think the defense of A.J. Green is something that just kind of slips our mind because he's so good at shooting the basketball that at times we just kind of don't think about his defense. And I know Doc Rivers gave him a shout out a couple times in the post-game press conference. And I thought A.J. Green's defense tonight against a very, very athletic perimeter from the Houston, offense for the Houston Rockets was underrated, a big part of the game. The highlighted plays are going to be the Dame bucket at the end, the Giannis block. But without Brook Lopez tonight, and I'm glad he avoided a serious injury, and without A.J. Green, man, it's looking grim. And shout out to the whole team too, because to lose the way that they did on Saturday, and you and I talked about it at length. It's been talked about from everybody. The 2-minute report came out. Doc Rivers was fined. Everybody knows the call was wrong. For them, Justin, to fall behind 16-3 to start the game, it could have been a game where they easily just sunk in their sneakers and kind of went through the motions. But, boy, did they battle back. Shout out to all of them, because it was a game where, look, it was a resilient game. They needed this win. They needed to bounce back in a big way, and they sure did. Again, credit from top to bottom. But Brook Lopez, A.J. Green, my players of the game, fantastic.
Yeah, this is a game that if you are not 4-9 coming into play, I mean, that's a bummer. That's a bummer that was there for the taking. Shoulder shrug and move on to the next. Where you are, it is still very early. But I think where you are added that urgency to winning this. Not only that, it's just we've had so much discussion over the process improving for the Bucks and heading in the right direction. But sooner or later, you have to see the results. And for the longest time, the Bucks hadn't even played in one of these clutch situations. They were the last team in the league to enter that. Actually, either them or the Oklahoma City Thunder for different reasons, obviously. And you started to increase those, like it's been one after another the last week or so, but you haven't had the greatest track record of success in those games this season. So to that point, it was important to win this game as well. And we talked about that Pistons game and the win there, how it came to defensive game that you gutted it out. You found a group that worked together, and you basically rode those guys the final 24 or so minutes of that game. And the hope was, this can be the launching pad, and we can build on this. And I do think we saw that against Charlotte. We talked about that a little bit Saturday, and that there wasn't really the letdown. It was a back-and-forth game. You didn't have those moments where the Hornets get off and running, and it's a double-digit deficit that you're calling out of. The ending is another discussion in itself, but I do largely think we've seen this team use that Pistons game as a launching point, and not just that Pistons game. I mentioned it quite a few times already, but it bears repeating. Coming into play tonight, Bucks had the 10th best defense in the league in the month of November. And there's good offense that they played. 4 of those 8 games were against the Celtics, the Cavs, and the New York Knicks, who are all in the top 4 in offensive rating in November. Well, after tonight's game, through 9 games in November, the Bucks have the 6th best defense in the league in the month of November, and the 5th best defense in the half court this month. So it's starting to get there. It's starting to work. And I think the big difference is you've just limited your liability. You know, last year it was entirely offense. They had to win these games with, and they've kind of minimized that, where you bring in these individual defenders. It's been a sprinkling of youth, too. We heard Doc mention it. You talked about it as well. A.J. Green's defensive ability, Andre Jackson Jr. and what he's brought to this group. But guys like Gary Trent as well, who Doc himself said, you know, he started out playing great defense for us. The shot wasn't there. I think that kind of hurt his defense a little bit. But these past few games, it's been right back to what we saw early in the season defensively from him. DeLon Wright, the guy that was out of rotation for 3 games, he's had some big defensive games for the Bucks the past few games as well. So they've really started to find the right mix and strike that balance of offense, defense. Offense remains something that certainly needs to improve. It's still in the bottom 10. It's not all Chris Middleton being out, but I do think that's a big part of it, that it's going to start to turn around when that is the case. But I have faith and trust in this offense that it is going to move in the right direction. To me, the more important part is the defense, and I've preached more than anybody, sample size is important. I know 9 games is not a lot, but it's matching the eye test and telling us what we need to see. There's the makings here for a group that can be anywhere from let's say 10th to 14th defensively. I do think there's the skeletons of that with this group.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get better too once you obviously get Chris Middleton, goes without saying, but Ryan Rollins, you know, I think that, you know, it looks better. You know, I think tonight would have been a perfect game.
By the way, I know he did not play tonight, but Ryan Rollins was out on the floor as soon as the game ended, getting up quite a few shots. So don't know that means he's going to be available for Wednesday, but you have to assume that's a good sign.
Absolutely, and Andre Jackson Jr. too, and I think we'll get into maybe a little bit of the decision to not, play a couple guys. But Andre Jackson Jr. only 5 minutes tonight. I mean, I think once you get, and I mentioned it on Buck Shoot Around, once you get, we're 5-9. It's been a very much roller coaster beginning to the season. But I feel like, Justin, we haven't even scratched the surface with where this team can be despite all of those changes, because you don't have Chris Middleton. Damian Lillard misses a few games. Giannis missed a game. Gary Trent Jr. has been in and out, back spasms, missed a few games. He looks like a completely different player. DeLon Wright, another shout out for DeLon Wright tonight. I don't know if I've seen watch him have a defensive possession where he doesn't get a hand on the ball. Like, a dude is everywhere defensively from the guard position on the perimeter. And we've talked about it. I know at some point, results mean more than words, but this team is putting, a puzzle together. They're not all there yet. And once we can kind of establish a healthy rotation and we get guys going, you get Ryan Rollins going for 3 games, and then all of a sudden he has a bad injury and he's out for a handful of games. So it's like you get something going, then something gets stuck in the wheel and you got to get out and pull it out. And I think eventually the numbers that you said before definitely pass the eye test. And I think that's the team that they can be, Justin, going forward once they get some good luck going with these injuries.
855-616-1620, the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. 5-9 now on the season. And, again, as we said quite a bit after Saturday, I get the record is disappointing. It is still very early. There is still time to pull yourself out of this. The big thing is stop digging the hole, right? Like, make sure the digging is done. You're not gonna get above 500. It's going to take some work to get there. So that's why it's important to make sure, the damage is done. Let's stop digging the hole, and now let's start working on pulling ourselves out of it. And that's what we've seen largely from this group for the past 9 games. The record reflects it at 4-5, and those defensive metrics that we tossed out there. 855-616-1620 is the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. We'll hear some of your thoughts, talk a little bit about the identity of this group. Is it shifting once more? We'll get into that conversation next on Bucks Talk.
Visit family-owned Ken Michaels Furniture and our in-store design centers where you'll still find beautiful, luxurious, heirloom-quality American-made furniture. Right now, save 30 to 35% store-wide and take advantage of our complimentary design services. Whether you're moving, renovating, or updating, our designers will help your vision become a reality. Visit Ken Michaels Furniture in Brookfield on Capitol Drive and in Greenfield on Highway 100 to save 30 to 35% store-wide today. Sleep better and save more with mattresses from Milwaukee Mattress and Ken Michaels Furniture. Handcrafted in our Milwaukee factory, our mattresses utilize natural materials like cotton cushioning, which dissipates body heat, Joma wool quilts for warm wintry nights and cool summer evenings, and natural latex providing superior conformability and pressure relief for aching joints. Stop in today at any Ken Michaels Furniture store and save up to 50% compared to national brands.
Rake in a big win this November at Potawatomi. Go head-to-head in the Cash Clash game show for your share of $300,000 in cash and prizes. Just play with your rewards card for entries. Prize drawings on Thursdays. The Cash Clash game show at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, Milwaukee. Your win is waiting. More info at paysbig.com. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
The Round Ball Repartee returns. This is Bucks Talk.
101-100, the final score here. A throwback game, a defensive game for both of these teams. And we heard so much from Doc Rivers earlier in this season about identity, and Giannis backing up that as well, that we're still trying to find our identity, and we don't have it quite yet. I can't help but wonder, Brandon, if we're starting to see the identity now, and that is not what any of us anticipated.
It is not.
But is the identity defensive for this Bucks team? That sure, you have Giannis and you have Damian Lillard, and you've added some shooting. Gary Trent Jr. has been huge the past few games. A.J. Green hit the biggest jump shot of the game for the Bucks, but they have largely started to turn things around, which at 5-9, I think we can say turning it around because of their defense. Is that what the identity of this group is going to be? Yeah.
I'm okay with that, Justin, quite frankly. And I think the offense at times will find it, they'll be fine. They're going to get buckets when they need buckets. You saw that tonight with Damian Lillard. And eventually when Chris Middleton comes back, they'll be able to spread the floor a bit more. But you know better than anybody, and any Bucks fan knows, that's what won them the 2021 championship was their defense. I mean, they weren't, shaking the ground offensively that year. They won it with key stops on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I would not have put that on the bingo card for the Bucks identity going into this season. But, Justin, when you look at the surface, you go out and you acquire Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, who I think's defense is a bit underrated. We talked about A.J. Green's defense. And DeLon Wright, those are kind of your off-season moves. I know A.J. Green was here last year. it kind of makes sense, and I'm okay with it. And I also think Damian Lillard's defense is underrated as well.
I thought it was interesting that, we didn't see this earlier in the season and wondered in a similar spot against the Cleveland Cavaliers, would you pull Damian Lillard off the floor on that final defensive possession? They did not, but Doc Rivers did tonight. He was pulled off the floor with, 3.9 left, and you pick up the foul, final 2 seconds as well. You opted not to go with Dame on the floor, and that can be tricky to navigate depending on the makeup and personality of that individual, but I think that's one of the benefits of having a veteran group and a group with Dame and Giannis that, Giannis talking about the sacrifices necessary, having experienced a championship, being very vocal this season. Doc Rivers talked about that the other day, too, about, Giannis is always kind of led by example, but one of the conversations that we had with him, I don't recall if he said over the summer or earlier in the year, was that's great, but I think with this group, with the young guys that we're sprinkling in, they need to hear it from you, too, and we've seen that for Giannis. We've heard Damian Lillard talk about winning being the most important thing, that I think you're able to get away with some of those things and go to more size and defensive guys, but you go back and look, I know I personally, I won't speak for you, Brandon, but I know I probably came off a little harsh Saturday, the last time we had this show, when the future of Damian Lillard was brought up by a few callers.
Yep.
I think this is a prime example of the importance that Damian
100%.
Lillard is going to bring to your team. Like, sure, there are some challenges on the defensive end. We didn't see too much of it tonight. I think a lot of that is, this is just it's a fascinating Rockets team because their offense was hovering around the top 10 coming into play tonight. They had been top 10 in offense and defense for most of the early part of this season, but they're not really efficient at anything they do. 3-point shooting, scoring in the paint. They take a high volume of those long twos, but the way they get their offense going is through steals and transition and scoring second chance points on offensive rebounds. So I do think the Bucks were aided a little bit there as well in the sense that there wasn't that dynamic backcourt score. I know Fred VanVleet started to go off in this one.
Oh, had shades of 2019, Justin.
But it's not.
Gave me a nightmare.
It wasn't a Tyrese Maxey type or some of the other scores that the Bucks have gone up against. So I do think that helped them out some. But I get where we're coming from with that notion. To me, the pushback is this: Damian Lillard hitting that basket. His jump shot wasn't there. The only three that he hit tonight was where it was fouled and the shot wasn't counted. But what Doc said after the game, that it's a lot like Ray Allen, in that he could be having the worst shooting night and incredibly cold, but he still believes he has to take and make that last shot. And you saw it tonight. And as we said Saturday, if Damian Lillard was available for that game in Charlotte and the situation is the exact same, things go differently. Does that mean the Bucks win? Maybe not. But that's not the offensive possession the Bucks get in those final 7 seconds of the game.
Let me ask you a question real quick about Damian Lillard, and I know we got to get to another break. Has his game, am I just not up to par on Damian Lillard? But it feels like, Justin, and this is just, again, I don't have any numbers in front of me. It feels like he's finishing the rim at a higher amount than he was last year. Maybe he was like this in Portland. I didn't watch him close enough in Portland. But it feels like when his shot's not falling tonight was a prime example. He's able to get to the rim relatively easy and finish at a good pace. Does it feel like this year that's more of an emphasis on his game, or has that kind of always been a part of his game?
It's always been a part of his game. He did not. It wasn't a strong suit last year, and there was a lot of things that we talked about that. Yeah. It wasn't the Dame that we had seen in the past in some of those regards, but it has started to change. I think there's been different bursts of it. the volume of where he's taking his shots from has remained pretty consistent. He is taking more mid-range shots this year, and the Bucks have kind of been that mid-range team when you think about Bobby Portis and Giannis really adding to that as well. But he has been better at finishing at the rim. He's shooting 67% there this year. It was about 60% last year. And those mid-range shots, too, 48% this year. It was 39% last year. So this is a much different version. The one thing that just hasn't clicked yet is the three-point shooting. You know, we had one game, I believe, where he had that outburst. Other than that, he's had some struggles there. But it's no different than Gary Trent Jr. When we said this, Doc Rivers said the same thing. Like, you don't – a guy like that, you don't just become a non-shooter overnight. And I think that's the case with Damian Lillard as well, especially considering all those other numbers we threw out. His efficiency around the basket, his mid-range shots, the burst that he's displaying. It's still there, and it's better than it was a season ago. So I expect the longer shots to start to fall at a much higher rate here relatively soon for this team. 855-616-1620, the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. We mentioned, is the defense the identity for this team? I do want to get back to that conversation coming up after this.
AccuNet Mortgage is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 255368.
Steve and Ashley heard our radio ads over the years, and when it came time to buy their first home, they clicked on the blue button. We sent them a credit-verified pre-approval the same day and upgraded to a rock-solid, fully verified and guaranteed pre-approval shortly thereafter. We also let them know about AccuNet's property-specific pre-approval, where we might be able to include those magic words, no appraisal required. When they wrote their next offer, several $1,000s over asking to make sure someone else didn't end up sleeping in their dream home, their property-specific rock-solid guaranteed pre-approval did include that most powerful phrase, no appraisal required, and the sellers picked Steve and Ashley's offer over several others. If you think all mortgage lenders and pre-approvals are the same, think again. Go with the local mortgage lender that has the tools and know-how to help you win. We'll also likely save you $1,000 to $3,000 in closing costs for exactly the same rate as your bank. Whether you're looking to buy or refi, click on the blue button today at accunet.com.
I remember a guy by the name of Al Stankovich. Oh, yes.
Ben and Arvid Huth, brothers and owners of Penny Mustard Furnishings.
I have never seen children so well behaved as his children. And I remember saying to him, wow, your kids are well behaved. He looked at me and said, well, we work on it. His son looked at me and says, yep, he works on it. I'll never forget that line from his son, who was maybe 8, 9 years old at the time. But Al and his wife bought, it was the first big bedroom set we ever sold. It was the Paramount bedroom set. It was a beautiful bedroom set we had at the time, made in Spencer, Wisconsin. I don't think he knew, and I think we were scared to tell him that it was the biggest sale we ever made at the point in time, but it was an absolute huge sale. I think we were dancing after he walked out the door.
Well, I think we were in the store at 11:30 or midnight, just visiting with them. They're just
nice people,
really nice people, and it was just one of them perfect all-around transactions.
Yes.
Nice people,
good customer, just a good guy. His wife was really nice.
Yep,
I remember that sale.
I delivered that.
See more at pennymustard.com.
When I shop St. Vincent de Paul thrift stores, every time I come in, it's like a whole new store. It's because new inventory is arriving daily, all kinds of everything. And let me tell you, thrift store prices make buying easy. And helping others at the same time, that's icing on the cake. St. Vincent de Paul thrift stores on Highway 100 in Layton and Greenfield, 23rd in Lincoln, and 76th and Bradley Road in Milwaukee.
You're gonna love it, St. Vincent de Paul.
This is Bucks Talk.
$101 to 100. Bucks outlast the Rockets tonight. A game that finally goes their way. One that comes down to the final possession of the game. No foul this time, though. You couldn't help but wonder with the look that Alperen Şengün got. Doc Rivers, very candid afterwards, said, I got to rewatch it. But, yeah, we know our guys blew the switch. I don't know who blew it or where it occurred or how, but we'll review that. But, yes, we got lucky there. And, you know, what we kind of said at the top of the show, Brandon, there's no real other way to view this than the basketball gods just saying, I know. They've had it. Like, this one's theirs. It's their turn to get one of these.
I almost fell to my knees when I believe it was Fred VanVleet threw the ball out, and I think Giannis and I want to say Andre Jackson Jr. go to the same guy at the top of the key, and I was like, oh, my God. I saw the ball go up, and I don't know how – I mean, again, pressuring the inbounder was probably the reason that pass was overthrown, but – Justin, do we need that in the biggest way? Not only did the Bucs need that, but we needed that as a fan base. We deserved that one. Everything that seemed to go wrong throughout different parts of this game, it felt like started off really bad, then they fought back, and then they gave it away again in the third quarter. Then Fred VanVleet brings back nightmares from 2019, and then they go up 4 with, I don't know, a minute left, and then A.J. Green bails the Bucs out. I'm telling you, man, this has been – off recent memory, one of the most stressful starts to a season. But you are right. I mean, based off of those numbers and the trends that we are seeing, it is something positive to absolutely look at. And I think it all starts with the defensive side of the ball for the Milwaukee Bucks. That is right now. I don't think that's a debate. Their identity, which again, sign me up for.
Yeah, and if we take out garbage time, they are the 19th defense overall in the league this season, but 7th best during the last 2 weeks. So, again, it's matching the eye test in what we've seen recently for this group. It's starting to feel more and more like that needs to be the identity. That, even when we had these visions of the Bucs being this offensive juggernaut, and to be clear, it still could get there. Mm-hmm. But how many of those teams do we see ultimately reach the highest of highs in this league and win championships? Like the Celtics were a very good offense last year. They broke all the records, most efficient offense, Missoula ball with the volume of threes and how they find the efficient threes, how they can space the floor. They're obviously an elite offense, but they have a very, very good elite defense as well. The Golden State Warriors, when they were the ones ushering in the change in the volume of threes that we were seeing, what people oftentimes fail to mention is the Warriors built a very, very good defense around that team as well. So it just doesn't work to have the one-sided approach. Like the Denver Nuggets, when people talk about you need to be in the top 10, offense and defense, they have a shot to win a championship, especially defensively. The Denver Nuggets title from 2 years ago oftentimes gets pointed to as the but, again, with the context of things, second half of the season, that was a much different team when they were sprinkling in Aaron Gordon and switching a lot more. That defense was not a middle-tier defense from really January on that year. So it boils down to your defense has to be better than league average to give you a chance. I don't know if this is sustainable for the Bucs. I have belief that it is because of the caliber of opponent that we've seen this against. And granted, did you shut down the Cavs? No, but that's an explosive offense. Same with the Boston Celtics. But you weren't just run off the floor. Like, you're going to bend against those types of offenses. It's doing things like this. And again, the Rockets were the 11th best offense coming into play tonight. But it's doing things like this against teams like the Rockets, like the Hornets, those mid-tier teams and lower. Like, that's where you really have to dig in and boost those numbers and say, look, it's here. It's in here. We just need to continue to harness this. That's what we've seen since November. So as soon as you can get Chris Middleton back and we can start to explore more options and discussions over, well, what's the right mix with this team? Who needs to do what? What are roles for these guys? You're starting to at least lay the foundation now of our defense has been good enough. Let's start to build up that offense. And honestly, this is not the conversation any of us expected to have last year. But if you can have both around the same, if your offense and defense are, say, 12th, 13th, you would obviously much rather have your offense be elite. But that may ultimately be the recipe for this team to continue to advance.
And come playoff time, like you talked about it earlier, too, like it's all about half-court stops. I mean, there's not many teams that you're going to go up into the playoffs. And I know the Thunder are kind of the up-and-coming. The Rockets are kind of built sort of similar. But when it comes down to it and it comes down to the playoff basketball, the game slows down tremendously, and it's a lot more half-court stops that are needed in order to win those games and those series. And we proved that in 2021. The only thing I would say about tonight, Justin, although you and I are in almost complete agreement, which usually never happens, which I feel like we should celebrate that a little bit tonight, is just that the offensive rebounds. If you're going to be a good defensive team, which we feel like the Bucks are headed in that direction, they gotta shore up their rebounding. Tonight, they allowed 16 offensive rebounds. Honestly, I thought it was more. So I feel a little bit better, I guess, but it felt like it was more watching the game, and that was kind of the big difference, in that third quarter.
855-616-1620, the number to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. Are they finding a defensive identity? If so, it's really largely due to two players. We'll get into that conversation next on Bucks Talk.
Call quality for the signature service you deserve.
This is Anthony Zanevsky with Quality. Because we are truly local and family-owned, I think that lends to the trust you can have in our company. And that means when we put out a promotion like this, it's always going to be a deal that you can believe in. So here we go. When you buy an Armstrong heating and cooling system, we'll give you the choice of a legitimate $1,700 off or a free water heater. And with federal and state money helping you pay for the HVAC upgrade, that will make this deal even better. Now, the average life of a water heater is 6 to 9 years. Yours is probably past that or getting there. So before you walk into a flooded basement, you can take care of this and upgrade a big part of your home's inner workings and get a pretty good deal at the same time. So call Quality and get a free water heater when you upgrade your home's HVAC system.
Call quality for the signature service you deserve.
Call Quality, now offering heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric.
So how do you underpromise and still get the job? We believe in our hearts we're going to do great work for you. We're just really careful about making unrealistic promises. At Semper Fi, we refuse to set the bar higher than we can jump. But be assured, that's the goal, to do all we can to jump as high as possible to try to exceed your expectations. We're looking to break records. That's how you win over customers, get really great referrals, and build a great business. When you're making a decision to hire an exterior remodeling company, character, integrity, and the feeling that the people you're about to hire are truly eager to show you how good they are should stand at the top of your list. This is Brad Youngluth with Semper Fi Roofing and Exteriors, your local, veteran-owned and operated exterior remodeling company. For your new roof, siding, window and door installation, or masonry work, you can count on Semper Fi to keep you safe, warm, and dry.
We keep you safe, warm, and dry. Semper Fi.
Heart disease won't stop us. Diabetes, allergies, cancer. Nothing will keep the Freighter and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network from pushing Wisconsin ahead. We're constantly raising the bar for medical excellence and providing more ways to receive it, so you have it for all your health needs, big and small. Let's push ahead, and we'll make life here as great as it can be. Visit Freighter.com to find out how.
Welcome back to Bucks Talk.
So as we talk about this identity that the Bucks stumbled into is probably a harsh way to put it, but what they may have discovered here. To me, it really centers around two players. And we've talked a lot about Gary Trent Jr., how much he's given you on the defensive end, Andre Jackson Jr., and the inclusion of him back in the rotation, what it's meant for the energy and youth of this team, taking on some individual defensive assignments. A.J. Green, how solid he has been. Even DeLon Wright getting back into the mix, and he made some big plays tonight and has done so really over the last 3 or so games. But the identity on the defensive end, I think it starts and ends with Giannis and Brook Lopez. 7 combined block shots tonight. We wondered coming into the season if we would see any similarities between this Bucks team and Cleveland Cavaliers teams of the past, because Greg Buckner, as Doc Rivers has dubbed him, defensive coordinator of this team, was the associate head coach for the Cavaliers the last 4 seasons. And that Cavs team, of course, had Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Are they like for like with Brook and Giannis? No, but Jared Allen is more of your traditional big and a very good rim protector, similar to Brook Lopez. Evan Mobley has some similarities, some to Giannis with his defensive versatility. And even last year, I know every time the Cavs were in town, we would hear Cleveland reporters asking whoever it was with the Bucks those questions over, do you see any similarities? The year prior to that as well, I remember Bud getting those questions. Hey, do you see any similarities between Giannis and what Evan Mobley is becoming? So knowing all that, you looked at that personnel and you said, well, we have two similar bigs. The Cavs did not have a bevy of elite individual defenders on the perimeter. You could certainly make a case that they had better defenders than the Bucks did, but it wasn't like the Cavs' perimeter defense was full of Derek Whites and Jaylen Browns and Drew Holidays, and yet they were still a very good defense. Year in, year out, they're in the top 10. So coming in, you wondered, is the blueprint there for the Bucks to do the same thing defensively? Last year, the Cavs had the 6th best defense in the league. The Bucks were 19th. The year prior to that, similar story as well, where we mentioned they had always hovered around the top 10 defensively. They've been in basically the first half of the top 10 each of these past few seasons defensively. 2 years ago, Cleveland was the best defense in the league. So I think that's a big part of this too, is you're starting to see Greg Buckner putting his imprint on this team. And look, some of the things we talked about a lot under Mike Budenholzer when he came here, let's just do those. Let's take away the easiest stuff. Let's take away the most efficient shots. You're not going to get shots at the rim against us. We're going to wall that off. Now, to your point, the rebounding, that is certainly something that you need to improve upon. In fairness, you've just played the top 2 offensive rebounding teams in the league in 2 of your last 3 games, but still the issue has been there beyond those 2. I mean, the Hornets were not one of the top offensive rebounding teams in the league, and you wouldn't have known it by watching Moussa Diabate. It's been a long-time issue for this Bucks team, but we're starting to see that, of walling off more. And the difference between this year and last year, where last year there was never in identity, and especially early in the season when there was a lot of confusion, you were playing Brook Lopez away from the rim, you didn't have strengths to lean on the perimeter, that it was essentially, well, we just got to outscore them. With this group, you can take some of that away, and some of the replacements that we talked about, the upgrades. Gary Trent Jr. being an upgrade over Malik Beasley. Taurean Prince being an upgrade over Jay Crowder. DeLon Wright being an upgrade over Pat Beverly, which, in the case of 2 of those 3 guys, maybe it took some time for Bucks fans that were not familiar with them to start to see that, but we've started to see it. And to me, that's the biggest difference, is they know what they want to take away defensively. They're doing that behind Giannis and Brook Lopez. And then on the perimeter, as we said at the top of this, they've limited the liabilities, where it's not one after another of, we can have our way with this guy, we can have our way with that guy. You're at least sprinkling in capable to good defenders where, you think back to last year, Brandon, there were multiple possessions that you had several liabilities or weak links that you would look at defensively and say, well, I hope it doesn't, swing around to this guy and that's who gets beat. You've limited that this year. So in turn, between taking away the shots at the rim and some of the little things we saw last year when Doc Rivers took over as well, I mean, transition defense, the volume of attempts, it's still higher than you would like in terms of, the amount of possessions your opponent is running in those spots, but also part of it is this is an old team, and that's just going to be the case. So the big part from last year was, as soon as Doc Rivers arrived, the transition defense went from league worst to middle of the pack, hovering between there and, close to the bottom 10, which, again, everything we've discussed about the makeup of this group, fine. As long as it's not in the bottom 5 or really low in that bottom 10, like if you can hover around the middle of the pack. The last I checked, I think they were 17th in efficiency and transition defense. If you can sit there, that's a major step forward. Taking away shots at the rim, that's a major step forward. And then just sprinkling more capable defenders on the perimeter is a huge boost for this team, and I think that's all of what we've seen here in November.
Yeah, naturally, Justin, I automatically feel better about the perimeter defense just off of the few names that you've mentioned, and obviously when you get Ryan Rollins back into the fold. But to kind of touch back on your identity and where it's focused around, and I agree, it's Giannis and Brook Lopez. And if you look at the Eastern Conference, and you mentioned the Cavs, but I'll mention a few other teams where those two are going to be your anchors, in a series where you have to get stops. Potentially with Cleveland, you mentioned them. The New York Knicks, they go out and acquire Karl Anthony Towns. The Bucks had a nightmare matchup with them a couple weeks ago, but you're going to see him, potentially in the playoffs. The Miami Heat with Bam Adebayo, and the Philadelphia 76ers, although they're 2-11, eventually I feel like they'll turn things around. But they're another team where they have a big where you're going to have to rely on Brook Lopez and Giannis to make some stops on the defensive side of the ball with Joel Embiid. So it's kind of hard to argue the point that you made. And look, if you're a Bucks fan, having to rely and your identity being focused on the defensive side of the ball with Brook Lopez and Giannis, sign me up, man, because it's hard to find a duo that's better than that.
Yeah, and, we don't know the answer to if injuries and this team starting the way they did in terms of their record, if that didn't occur, do you really just toss all the young guys that we've seen into the deep end? Does A.J. Green become a huge part of the rotation? Does Andre Jackson Jr. get reinserted? Do we see Ryan Rollins? None of us can answer that other than Doc Rivers, but the fact is, it doesn't matter how we got there. We got there, and that was kind of the elephant in the room all through the offseason and early in the season as well. It's an old team that you need to sprinkle in some youth and some young legs and find ways to get those opportunities for these guys, and here we are. And even tonight, this was one of the things I was most interested by with the return of Damian Lillard, knowing, okay, he's back. Ryan Rollins is still not back. What does the rest of this rotation look like? We did not see Pat Connaughton tonight. And Doc Rivers said after the game, doesn't mean Pat's out of the rotation. We just liked the way some of these guys were playing defensively, and we decided to stick with them. That's something it's not just the Coach X doesn't play young guys. A lot of this is just the makeup of the team. I said quite a bit over the summer that I felt like the roster made sense now, and you looked at the start and you thought, well, does it? But now I think we're starting to see it, that the makeup of the roster makes more sense, much more sense this year than it did a year ago. All the individual players we mentioned and who they replaced, upgrades, the youth that has been sprinkled in here as well, the makeup of the team and how you can do some things differently. All of that, to me, makes the most sense with what we're seeing from this group so far, and especially the defensive side of things, how things are starting to turn around and move in the right direction. One other thing that I think we're starting to get some clarity on, I want to talk about a little bit in the next segment as well, and it could prove to be a very important thing for the Bucks as we move into not the back half, but as we move into another month of the NBA schedule here. So we'll get into that conversation and start to wrap things up after this on Bucks Talk.
In 1964, we were making strides towards space travel.
Mary Poppins was the #1 movie in theaters.
And the Beatles were taking America by storm.
Which was long before I was born.
Facts. 1964 is also the year it all started for Richland's Tire and Service Centers. 60 years of continuous growth and more happy customers than you can shake a stick at.
Okay, the streamers are a bit overkill. It's just us in the studio.
All right. But it's important to know accomplishments like these aren't possible without a dedicated team. So hats off to them and our founder, my dad, Dick Mitschke, for understanding the importance of customer focus.
Facts. There's no 60 years of anything without you, the customer, which is why our focus will remain on you and only you for years to come.
Thank you from all of us here at Richland's Tire and Service Centers.
Richland's Tire and Service, such a refreshing Dashing change, Rich Lawns.
It's a bully that will not let up until you do something about it. And the worst part is that the bullying happens when you're at your most vulnerable. You might as well have your hands tied behind your back while that bully puts one hand over your mouth and pinches your nose with the other. He'll let up, let you catch your breath, and then he'll do it again. Sleep apnea is a bully. Not long ago, we heard our friend John tell you about how his bully was stopping his breathing in his sleep over 145 times an hour. Think about what that can do to your body's organs. It's no wonder that the snowball effects of long-term obstructive sleep apnea are heart disease, stroke, even depression and anxiety. But this problem is solvable, and we have solutions, and you'll be surprised at how simple they are.
To date, Advent has solved over 40,000 breathing triangle problems. It's time to put that bully in his place. Go to adventknows.com to schedule your appointment, because Advent knows when you breathe well, you live better. Results may vary.
Looking for a fun family activity to get into the holiday spirit? Visit or volunteer for Capco's Kids to Kids Toy Drive in Grafton on Saturday, December 7th. The event is free and we will have lots of fun activities. Capco is dedicated to bring communities together and has collected over 300,000 toys through Kids to Kids. Join us and WTMJ for a celebration of giving and bring a new unwrapped toy to help children in need this holiday season. Support Kids to Kids. Visit kidstoKidstoydrive.com.
The Roundball Repartee returns. This is Bucks Talk.
A 101-100 win tonight for the Bucks over the Houston Rockets. Their defense really shines. It has been extremely good in the month of November as well. We think that's the identity that this team is starting to move towards. And one other thing that we're starting to get more clarity on, at least tonight, was the bench. And, you know, I talked about Pat Connaughton not seeing the floor tonight, but you think about the bench, Brandon, 34 points tonight, but just the makeup of that group and how much it makes more sense when you sprinkle in what you can get from it with the offense that you can lean on from Bobby Portis and Gary Trent Jr., but two-way play as well from Gary Trent Jr., A.J. Green, what DeLon Wright has brought. Those are the only four guys that played off the bench. You basically went 8 deep tonight. Andre Jackson Jr. started but only played 5 minutes, so it was basically those four guys off the bench and the four starters outside of Andre Jackson Jr. that carried the way for you. That's another big piece that Doc Rivers talked about earlier. They were really searching and trying to find what are the right mixes, what are the right lineups and groupings to play, especially when we sprinkle in the second unit. And they really struggled with it early in the season. A lot of that, if we're being honest, is just guys not hitting shots. Like all of this, as much as we talk about the defense and how great it is, and it has been very, very, very much improved. If Gary Trent Jr. doesn't hit 4 threes, if Brook Lopez doesn't hit 5 threes, if guys aren't hitting shots, it changes things dramatically. Like, I'm not going to say some of the bugaboos and issues that the Bucks have run into weren't there. You know, earlier in the season, they just weren't hitting shots. But I do think that was a large part of digging that hole, the start that you got off to in terms of your wins and losses and everything else that we saw. A lot of it boiled down to just not hitting shots.
Yeah, and if you're Doc Rivers, too, it's kind of somewhat of a blessing and a curse, Justin, when you got Andre Jackson Jr., DeLon Wright, Ryan Rollins, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr. You got a bunch of these guys, A.J. Green, Pat Connaughton. So it's almost like you got more than you – I don't want to say more than you want because I think you have plenty, but you're able to – if you're Doc Rivers, you're able to play matchups a lot more, and you saw that tonight, obviously, when you mentioned Pat Connaughton and his decision to not have him out there. So, again, credit to John Horst because, again, it adds a lot of flexibility defensively, and you can kind of mix and match, you know, who's playing well, who's not playing well, who, you know, plays well against, you know, opponent X and Y. And I think it's setting the Bucks up for success down the road and throughout the course of the season and eventually come playoff time.
Well, we'll see if they can continue to move this forward. Wednesday night, a border battle, the Bucks and the Chicago Bulls here at Fiserv Forum. Make note of the tip time. That is a 6:30 tip-off here. 6 o'clock is when our pregame coverage begins. And you got the Bulls, you got the Pacers, and you got the Charlotte Hornets to wrap up this 4 game homestand. But again, things appear to be headed in the right direction for this Bucks team. 6:30 tip-off on Wednesday night for the Bucks and the Bulls, the rematch. And as always, be sure to stick around after the game for Bucks Talk. Brandon and I will talk to you again Wednesday night.
To all you tool people out there, has Harbor Freight got a deal for you? Big savings every single day this November. Because we know that right now, when the price of everything only seems to go up, you need a place where prices